The call on the ice stands. We gotta go.
Okay, fellas, we are set to go.
Let's roll, boys. Come on, let's get going.
We are kicking.
Here we go. Both guys, 5 minutes each for fighting. Watch the blue. Play the puck. We're not doing this. Hey.
After further review, it's the Scouting the Refs podcast.
Yeah, baby.
Here's your hosts, Todd Lewis and Josh Smith.
Okay, gentlemen, play ball. Let's go.
All right, guys, let's drop the puck.
We are eagerly awaiting the start of the Stanley Cup final in the National Hockey League. Josh, I think this is a good time to remind people that, you know, we have the evolution of play as the season goes along. And when we get to the Stanley Cup final, the rule book is pretty much just a suggestion at this point.
It's a good idea. There are rules in there, and some of them will be interpreted more strictly than others. Some will be a little bit looser. Some might be a little bit more concerned about keeping that balance and keeping things fair rather than calling it strictly by the book. But one thing is for certain, Todd, we will always call a puck over glass.
See, that's the absolute. And if we could get all rules to be interpreted that way, boy, it would be something. This is the Scouting the Refs podcast. You will find Josh on many of the social platforms at Scouting the Refs, be it Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, whatever. You'll find me as well at Todd Lewis Sports. Coming up on this week's episode, who's in, who's out? That's a whack. Did you see that? Big hits and Mem Cup moments. Let's say, welcome back, Chris Rooney. After suffering that nasty cut near his eye, he is back in action for the conference finals, and he will be working in the Stanley Cup final as well.
Yeah, really nice to see. You know, anytime you've got an injury, it's a little scary. You're not sure how it's going to go. You're not sure what's going to happen. And obviously, poor Rooney getting the high stick up high here under his visor, cutting him right above the eye. Only needed a couple stitches to cinch that thing back up and then to take some time off to recover. So he was injured on that one. Obviously, Garrett Rank subbed in for him because he couldn't work the rest of the game. And then Rooney was out for a little bit of time. He missed the start of the conference finals. Now, we knew he was advancing. From what I understand, he was slated for Game 2 of Panthers Canes, wasn't ready to go, so Eric Furlat stepped in after working Game 1. Rooney didn't take the ice until Edmonton-Dallas Game 4, and then came right back to work Game 5 with Wes McCauley. So a little longer maybe than he expected it to take, but it was good to see him back out there on the ice, and nice to see him advancing to his 8th Stanley Cup final.
You mentioned Wes McCauley. That is another name that will be working in the Stanley Cup final as well. These, of course, is the plum assignment. Players work hard to get there, and so do the officials.
They absolutely do. So congratulations to the Stanley Cup Finals officials. Wes McCauley, Chris Rooney. McCauley, his 11th Cup Final. Chris Rooney, as I mentioned, his 8th. Joined by Francis Chiron working his 3rd, and Jean Hebert working his 3rd Stanley Cup Final. So those are your boys in bands. And then on the lines, we've got Scott Cherry, who's the veteran of the crew with his 6th Stanley Cup Final. Devin Berg, 2nd back-to-back. He was here last year for Oilers Panthers. And then Ryan Gibbons and Trent Knorr making their Cup Final debuts. So nice to see some younger guys on the lines. It's kind of funny. We're used to some of the old grizzled veterans, Todd. And, no offense to any of the guys out there, but you got like Johnny Murray, who's worked so many Stanley Cup Finals. And even when we look at the referees, Kelly Sutherland with the most playoff games, the most Cup Finals, the most Cup Final games among active officials. Dan O'Rourke right behind him, and neither of them making the cut to work this year's Stanley Cup Final.
Well, it is nice to have some new names that we'll be talking about undoubtedly going forward as well. Let's also recognize the officials that are working in the ECHL Kelly Cup final for the Toledo Walleye and the Trois-Rivières Lions. Sorry, Florida Everblades, the streak is over. You're not going to win another one. But again, nice to have some new names as part of this.
Yeah, apologies, as you mentioned, to the Everblades when it comes to new names, because they were a staple when it came to the ECHL finals there. Your refs, Nolan Bloyer, Logan Gruel, Tyler Haskell, Will Kelly, Rocco Stakowiak, and then on the lines, Max Bedard, TJ Dockery, Chad Fuller, Brian Gorkoff, and Matt Heinen. Congratulations to all of them working the Kelly Cup final.
All right, let's get into some NHL action that got a lot of attention. And there was a particular incident involving Darnell Nurse of the Edmonton Oilers and Roope Hintz of the Dallas Stars. There was some pushing, there was some shoving, and then Nurse used his stick to kind of whack Hintz across the top of his skate. Yes, he goes down. It was originally called a major penalty. They took the time to review it, have a look at it. It was reduced to a minor penalty. There was nothing further that came from the Department of Player Safety. I got to give Pete DeBoer props for the lobbying that took place after this, saying, well, if Connor McDavid had suffered such an injury, well, the guy would be suspended for life. I mean, that's pretty clever how you navigate that.
Yeah.
But Anyhow, this is what happened with it, but it turns out this was a bit of a nasty injury that Hintz suffered on this play.
Yeah, I know some folks thought he was faking it or that he was embellishing the injury on this play. Some people even minimizing it to say, well, it's a slash across the shin pads. It really wasn't. It was the heel of the stick across the top of the skate, which led to a broken foot for Hintz. So a lot worse, I think, than some people thought it was. When you look closely, yeah, he gets him right below the shin pads, which, I mean, props to Nurse for that targeted strike there. That was like a sniper shot right to the skate laces. And that hurts like hell. And in this case, you end up with a broken foot as a result. It's not the kind of thing that you can just shake off. It's hard, though. From an officiating standpoint, you have to look at the slash itself. Was this deserving of a 5-minute penalty? If it's across the shins, probably not. So can we make it more severe because it's on the skate laces? And they looked at it. So obviously they could see where the slash was taking place. You can't do it based on an injury. I know an injury is part of the rule book. There are certain criteria for certain penalties where they're escalated if it's an injury. We see it in high sticking. Refs aren't doctors. We can't expect them to be able to assess it at that point. I mean, even the guys on the bench didn't know that there was a broken foot there. So I have to give them a break here. I get that a major penalty for slashing is typically away from the play, typically designed to cause injury. And that's the thing, Todd, that hits both criteria for me. It's away from the play. There's not a play on the puck here. There's nothing happening other than what you could say loosely might be an attempt to injure. And I actually was okay with the major. I know it seems a little bit harsh, but because there was no hockey happening in that end of the ice at all, it's nonsense. I could live with 5. So I'm on board with DeBoer on that one.
Swinging a stick should warrant a severe penalty. So I'm with you. I could have seen a 5-minute major there. Now, because injuries are, DEFCON 1 in terms of secrecy in the playoffs, now that the Stars have been eliminated, the injury severity comes out. Would that be appropriate for player safety to then say, hey, you know what? We learned a little more information. We're going to slap you with a fine.
It's a great question and a great take. Now, we've talked with folks from player safety, and unfortunately, after the fact, it's not going to weigh in on their decision. And the reason is because of the way player safety approaches suspensions. They're looking to see if there's an injury, absolutely. But that's not where it starts. They're looking to see, is this a suspendable offense? Does this rise to the level of supplemental discipline? So the slash itself, is that suspendable? And once they decide that it is a suspendable offense, then they're going to look to see, was there a history here? Does this player have a tendency to do this frequently? Are they a repeat offender? Or is there an injury that was severe enough for us to bump this up a little bit more? If it's not suspendable, they're never going to take a look at the injury because it just simply wasn't a severe enough slash to warrant a suspension, let alone tacking on additional time for the injury that resulted. But one thing that I didn't like, I mean, look, you don't want to suspend him. You want to give him a fine, however you want to play it. I think it was definitely worthy of at least a fine. And I think not only that one, but I think I would have fined Bouchard here for doing a whack. Again, not during play, the same foot, the same location. Look at him. His eyes down on the skate the whole time. He knew what he was doing there. And if anything, Todd, is unsportsmanlike, it's that play right there.
It is at least unsportsmanlike. I'll give you that. All right, game 3 as well. Tough some stuff for the Dallas Stars in this one. Oiler defenseman Brett Kulak flips the puck over the glass. And as you said, that is an absolute. That is a penalty. However, after discussions with the officiating crew, no one saw the puck go over glass. So instead of killing off what should have been a 2-minute penalty for delay of game, the Oilers decided they would take matters into their own hands and score 2 quick goals in about 35 seconds. And they're up 2-0 and see you later from there.
This is a tough one. And this is one where your hands are really tied. If the officials didn't see it, based on where the players are in the position, you almost expect the puck to catch the glass there. You're in the corner, but you don't have a great angle on it. You can call the penalty if you see it. You can't call the penalty if you don't see it. And even the coach's challenge isn't going to help you here because you can challenge for a missed high stick and you can challenge for a penalty called for puck over glass, but you cannot challenge for a missed penalty for puck over glass. So there's really nothing they can do. The officials can't review it. The Dallas bench can't challenge this to say, hey, wait, that puck did go out of play. It's just not built to capture those. So this is one of the unfortunate misses that we just have to live with. And, looking at the players coming together there and where the officials are positioned, there's too many bodies to really see for sure. You can see by the camera angle here, the ref down low is on the opposite side of the ice. So he's looking through the goal cage, through the players that are there. The other ref is back near the blue line. So nobody had a really close shot to see whether or not the puck deflected off the Dallas player, whether it clipped the glass. And it's unfortunate, but this is one of the missed calls that we just have to live with.
Something that maybe we should look at as being able to challenge. If you can challenge the penalty, you should be able to challenge the non-penalty.
Hey, I don't know. I don't know if we want to go down that slippery slope of challenging non-calls.
Okay,
but if we're going to allow it for puck over glass, why not?
Well, then you have to get puck tracking in to use it to avoid things like this. So that's maybe it. Okay, let's talk about a big hit from Petrovic of the Dallas Stars that he imposed his will on Connor Brown, absolutely sent him flying and wound up putting him out of action. There were some, well, let's just say touchy Edmonton media types that were all up in the grill about Petrovic about this, but this is a clean hit.
I have no issue with this hit. I really don't. I don't see anything. I mean, unlike that Oilers fan right there, look at him. He's surprised. He's shocked, but I don't have any issues with this hit. I thought it was a clean hit. Now, I think this is shoulder to chest. He's hitting him right through the core. It's a solid hit. I will give Oilers fans the benefit that there is some contact to the chin on this play. Like we talked about last week, though, Todd, the illegal check to the head rule is concerned with illegal head contact, not all head contact, which means some head contact is legal in the National Hockey League. As I would expect player safety to say it, there is some head contact, but in this hit, Petrovic's hitting through the core. It's a shoulder to chest, and the head contact that is minimal is unavoidable on what would otherwise be a legal body check. So I think this was a clean hit. I think it's a solid hit. I think these are the types of hits that we don't necessarily want to get out of the game. Yes, there's some head contact here, but he didn't pick the head. He wasn't elevating. He elevated a little bit, but it was still shoulder to chest. It wasn't elevating into the head and making the head the main point of contact. So I think it's a good hit.
And landing against the boards, I think, worked against him as well.
That's the
other part of it. So, yeah, okay. Let's jump over to the other series of Florida and Carolina. Game number 2, Sebastian Aho. Speaking of hits, this one, however, was low, and I thought it was a little late on Sam Reinhart. Knocked him out of action as well. Nothing for Aho here. I think this was a miss, at least by the officials and perhaps by player safety.
This is a tough one. And I think this one, like the last one we were just talking about, it does come back a little bit to the situation. I don't like this hit mostly because of Aho backing in, and you're creating a dangerous situation. But the actual contact looks like it ends up hip on hip. It's not a knee on knee. He's not sticking out his knee. It's not quite a low bridge or clipping where you're targeting the knee or below. The problem is Reinhart didn't see him coming, so he's not expecting the hit, and he's got that weight on the left leg. So when you're hitting the left hip, he's putting some horrible, horrible pressure on that knee, and that's, I think, where you're getting an injury out of it. It's one of these unfortunate plays where you do have an injury, you have an unfortunate outcome, but it's really hard to say which part of this hit is illegal. I agree it was late. If you want to give a minor penalty for a late hit, you want to even go with the dangerous trip that we've seen before because it looked like a low hit. And I'm giving that for the refs calling it on the ice where you don't get the benefit of replay. But I think when we break it down and look at it, it's really unfortunate and it's hard to say, how does this hit fall into an illegal hit? It's not clipping. It's not knee on knee. It's hip on hip. But because of Reinhart being unprepared and because of Aho backing into it, it created a dangerous situation that might not be illegal. I think it's a minor penalty. I'd love to say that it was more than that, but I think when you really look at it, and when player safety had a chance to do it, you can't put it into one of those boxes to say, which rule did this break, and did it do so at a level to justify supplemental discipline?
I think it's more hip on thigh than hip on hip myself.
Yeah.
So,
and even that hip on thigh is, we're still not looking at like kneeing. We're still looking at what should be a hip check. And it doesn't get to the point of a suspension. I think with Reinhardt's awareness with where he was looking, and it's a cheap hit from Aho because he doesn't see him coming. You can't brace for impact. If he picks his skate up off the ice, he might go flying, but that might minimize the damage there. And that's the risk of when you have a blindside hit, which was taken out of the NHL rulebook. The language around blindside hits was removed. So you are allowed to deliver a blindside hit if it's otherwise legal. And that's why I think Aho got away with one here.
All right, let's shift over to game 3 now between the Panthers and the Carolina Hurricanes. Eetu Luostarinen is tossed for tossing Hurricanes Jackson Blake into the end boards from behind. There was, I thought, a very wide interpretation of what, if anything, for some, should be called here. After a chat and discussion, the officials decided 5 in a game. I get that Blake is, if you want to say putting himself into a vulnerable position as he skates towards the end boards. That's correct. But again, this is where the responsibility has shifted now to the player delivering the hit, and Luostarinen absolutely plows him into the end boards.
He does. And I know a lot of people were saying, what's he supposed to do there? You do have Blake hitting the brakes. He's stopping, and he's stopping in a really dangerous spot there. I think it's the momentum that really makes this hit as bad as it was. I think this is a good example of players learning how to take a hit and to be aware of plays in dangerous spots to not put yourself in a worse spot, like right near the boards. He can't stop. He can't brace for impact. He can't protect the puck there. He's going into the boards, and I think Luostarinen's not planning on stop, and the momentum is carrying them both in. So I get the major penalty based on degree of violence. I do think this was more about the circumstances and the context than the hit itself. I'm not even sure how much Luostarinen's trying to deliver a hit as much as he's bracing for body contact and putting his shoulder up. But like you said, Todd, the onus is on the hitter to deliver a legal hit, and that, I think, didn't happen. He didn't minimize contact on a defenseless player, and that's part of the criteria here, especially around the boarding rule. So I think that's what we're looking at when we see, is this a minor penalty? Is it a major penalty? I think it's deserving of a penalty. And the difference in the criteria is the degree of violence of the impact into the boards. You called it, though. There's an enormous amount of judgment. The rule book says that there's an enormous amount of judgment on this call, and they specifically call out in 41-1 that the onus is on the player applying the check to ensure their opponent is not in a defenseless position, and if so, to avoid or minimize contact. I know it's a bang-bang play. I know it's quick. I think Blake's stopping probably contributed to it, but that doesn't get Luostarinen off the hook. And I'm fine with it being a penalty. I'm okay with it being a major because it's dangerous. If they decided it was a minor because of Blake's positioning, I might have been able to live with that. I can definitely see the debate, but this was a scary hit. So I do get the major penalty being called. And when you've got a major penalty and there's an injury to the face or head, game misconduct is automatic.
That seems pretty evident as to what happened here. All right, let's move to game 4 now. And the Hurricanes were leading 1-0 in the third, and they score what looked to be their second goal of the game. However, the Panthers Eagle Eye video coaches tell Paul Maurice, you might want to challenge this one. And turns out he did, and he was right.
Yeah, it was a good call here. Credit to Florida Panthers video coach Myles Lee for that one. Robinson jumped early, and the fact that they caught it, I mean, he was wide open. He was so wide open because he was in the zone ahead of the puck, and you can see him in before the puck crosses the blue line. And thanks to Steve Peters for the video here, using this video that Steve broke it down. Did a great job. You can follow him online, S. Peters Hockey on X or Twitter. He's a telestration producer at ESPN, former video coach of the Arizona Coyotes, does a great job breaking down plays like this. And, he called it. Myles Lee with the good catch. And this was a pretty easy one. I mean, it looked initially like he just got a good jump on the play, and the reason he did is because he beat the puck. So good catch. I think great work by the video coaches. Can't underestimate the work that the video teams do and how responsible they are. It's so hard to score a goal, especially in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And you've got a guy sitting in a room watching the screen, waiting for the opportunity to take that goal off the board. So you've got to have good guys in that position. Every goal is important, and when your video coach can save you from giving up a goal, I think it's well deserved, and hopefully these guys get a raise.
He gets the stick taps that night for sure. All right, let's look at a couple of things from the Memorial Cup, which has just concluded. Let's talk about the goal that Medicine Hat scored that everybody thought was okay. And then there was a bit of confusion as to why there was a review and a challenge. And then it was like, oh, wait a minute. We missed something here. But it was initially thought maybe it's a hand pass, but no, it was a high stick.
Yeah, this was an interesting one. I wasn't quite sure what was going on. The broadcast team wasn't sure what was going on. And we don't get an announcement necessarily as to what the officials are reviewing for. That's one of my pet peeves, Todd, is that even at the National Hockey League level, let us know, here's the call on the ice. Here's what the review is for. Now, I will point out this is not a coach's challenge. This is something that is automatically reviewed in the CHL. All of these plays are. The only thing coaches' challenges are for goaltender interference. So this is a league review. And the question, it did look like a hand pass initially because you can see Richie putting his hand out. But what the actual concern was on this play was a high stick. So you see the puck pop up. You see the two players go for it. And right here, you're looking to see whose stick touches it on the way down. It bumped. Richie catches it just a little bit. I think hardly changed its trajectory, but you can see there was contact with his stick above the shoulder. That's enough to be a puck played with a high stick, which is enough for a missed stoppage, which is enough to wipe the goal off the board. So unfortunate for Medicine Hat on this play.
This was not the only difficulty that Medicine Hat had in this tournament as well. We, I believe, have seen this once this year during the season in the National Hockey League, but it is rare that there is a face-off violation, but we did have one again against Medicine Hat.
Yeah, tough one on this play. And you can see linesman Spencer Knox right there. He's watching it. He puts his hand out. Knox is right on top of it. He sees the player grab with his glove and push the puck. Now, I think ultimately the puck contacted his stick, but his hand comes off the stick. He reaches to swipe it with his hand, and maybe he pushed the stick at that point, but Knox is right on top of it. Rule 67-2 says a minor penalty for delay of game faceoff violation to a player who attempts to win the faceoff by batting the puck with their hand. It actually doesn't matter that his glove didn't touch the puck or that his glove pushed the stick and the stick touched the puck. He attempted to use his hand to win the faceoff. He did win the faceoff, but it's because of this doggy paddle right there, and that's the right call.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, one more as well. This for the London Knights. They lose a goal on goaltender interference. This was a strange play. I watched it the first time and I didn't catch it. I'm thinking, well, why are we calling goaltender interference here? But watch the replay and you'll be able to see why this was goalie interference.
So you're in the blue paint, or your goaltender's in the blue paint. Losing the goal stick is a huge part of this. So you have the player coming through, makes contact. Now the goalie's pulled backwards and loses his goal stick. He has an opportunity to reset. So he does get square to the shooter coming in, but it's so quick. He's without the goal stick, which was because of the attacking player's actions. So that's where we're looking at goaltender interference on this play. I think I was with you, Todd, when I first saw it. I said, I don't know. Is that really a bump? But where the contact happened, it's in the blue paint. The goalie loses his stick. It's a bang-bang play. And did he even have time to reset? You could argue that one, but because the contact caused the goaltender to lose his goal stick, I think that's enough to have this one overturned. And it was a bummer for Easton Cowan because he tied Mitch Marner's Memorial Cup scoring record. This would have put him ahead, and he couldn't find the score sheet after this one. So unfortunately, the goaltender interference challenge wiped that one off the board.
For Maple Leaf fans who are looking for some solace in this, perhaps Easton Cowan will be taking over for Mitch Marner in Toronto next year.
Good stuff, man. Where to work?
Get in the box. It's the Scouting the Refs podcast.
Nicely done.
Read more at scoutingtherefs.com. Follow Scouting the Refs on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Email the show at heyref@scoutingtherefs.com.
Very good, Michael.
Subscribe, share, and keep those sticks down.
That's good play.